What's up, my name is James Mulvaney and I work with thousands of different radio stations on a day-to-day basis, helping them get results. If you're interested in starting a radio station, I've got lots of videos on that as well. And in today's video, I thought we'd do something a little bit different and cover off 10 terms that you might commonly hear used in the radio industry. Now, of course, I was going to call this like top 10 terms, but I think there are lots more than 10 terms that you can be using. However, hopefully these 10 terms will give you some industry lingo. So if you're looking to go into radio, that you've got a better idea as to when someone says a certain thing, what it might actually mean. So let's go. So first on our list, automation. Radio automation is a term that's been around for quite a while, probably about 30 years now. And you know, you might have this image in your head back in the day when there was like guys in a studio literally like spinning discs and like with these big kind of stacks of tapes and stacks of cart machines, all this kind of stuff. Gone are the days when it's a very manual process, but if you ever watch back on videos of guys in studios in like the 70s and 80s, it's pretty cool how quickly they work because they're kind of like choo trying to play songs, jingles, and it's all very manual. However, probably since the late 80s, early 90s, pretty much 90% of radio stations have been based on computers. Radio automation is just simply a term that means your station is automated, and you can have different modes of automation. You can have fully automatic, e.g. the computer will just play music, or they'll play ad breaks, they'll play jingles, etc., throughout the day, or normally overnight when there's not a DJ there. But you can also run your automation in manual assist, which means it will play maybe 2 or 3 songs and it'll pause while you do some talking, and then it will continue. Now, if you haven't checked it out, radio.co is a fantastic way of automating your radio station. Why? Because it runs entirely from the cloud, and radio.co offers a really super easy to use interface which allows you to upload and manage your media, create playlists, schedule those playlists. You can have live DJs as well. So if you haven't checked out radio.co, it's well worth a visit. So when I say the word bed, you might think it's something I sleep on every night. Bed in the radio industry means simply a track that you talk over. So when a DJ comes out of a song, they might play, a jingle or a sweeper after that song, but then you'll hear that background music, which kind of keeps the pace up and it kind of sounds pretty cool. That is what is known as a bed. Beds can sometimes be royalty-free sample music, so basically taken out of a music library, so the radio station quite often doesn't have to then pay royalties on them. Or more increasingly, now I'm seeing on a lot of chart radio stations, they are looping the intro of a song and using that as the bed to talk over, so it's perfectly matched to when that song then goes, and it sounds pretty cool. So that's 2 different types of bed that you could potentially use in your production. Number 3, back announce. Back announce simply means when a song has just finished playing and the DJ talks about the song or the songs that have just finished playing. So I might have just finished playing the Beatles and say, hey, that was the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Do you remember that hit from back in the 60s? It sounds really cool, still sounds good on the radio. Something like that. That is what is known as a back announce. So we've covered back announce, now back time. Back time is simply working out how much time is left before a specific event. Nowadays, this is largely automated. I mentioned earlier automation software. This will quite often calculate song lengths and make sure that you're kind of always running to a specific schedule. But back in the day, if you were playing a certain song, or you had like 5 minutes left of your show and you had a song that's 4.5 minutes left, it's basically saying, okay, I've got to talk for 30 seconds, I've got to play that song that's 4.5 minutes long, and then we're on time. We're going to hit that exact clock marker when it gets to like 6 p.m. or whatever it might be. Next up, cans. Now you might think cans, like a can of Coke, but what I'm actually talking about is these things. This is a pair of cans, also known as a pair of headphones. Now, I don't know why they're called cans. I think it's because quite often, like, these are industry standard. These are used by in pretty much every radio studio across the world. These headphones are actually Beyerdynamic DT770 Pros. You can go and check them out if you like. But quite often they're referred to as cans in the studio, probably because they kind of look like quite big and chunky. I don't actually know why they're called cans. If you know, put it in the description below and tell me. Delay unit. Now, delay units are not used as much anymore, but they're still used when you have live callers, and all it does is it basically takes an input, an audio input, which will quite often be the presenter speaking and someone on the other end of the phone. it adds a delay, and then the output is slightly delayed based on the input. They're normally attached to a little button that the presenter can press to cut the caller off if they say something they shouldn't. Again, this is kind of an old school thing. Most callers nowadays, believe it or not, are pre-recorded. Even if they sound like it's live, most of the time DJs will actually record those calls during the songs, and then they'll play them out as if they're really happening, and they'll kind of make out like it's live. But as I say, most of the time these days it's pre-recorded. But delay units still have their uses. Donut. A donut's great. Donut is simply a jingle which has either like a station ID at the beginning, and then a piece of music in the middle that you can kind of talk over, and then another station ID or a singing ID at the end. So it basically allows the presenter to say, come out of a song, identify the station, say, hey, great to have you with us today, and we've got loads more music like this coming up, and then it will play the station ID again and then go straight into another song. So it's kind of like a really slick, efficient way of getting in some sort of talking between two station IDs, and quite often used between two different songs. Riding the fader. What does that mean? That kind of sounds like a horse riding term. We're actually talking about riding the fader. There's actually a more rude term for it as well, which I won't repeat right now. This simply means, as you're speaking, you're basically dipping the music so the audience can hear your voice clearly over it. And then maybe if you pause, you might put it back up. And it's basically just making sure you've got that nice, smooth adjustment of volume going up and down as you're talking. And then, when you finish talking, obviously you'll take your mic back down and you'll make sure the music's pushed up so the audience get a nice clear sound of the track you're playing. But riding the fader simply means controlling the level or controlling the volume of the music whilst you're talking over it. Sibilance. Sibilance is when I'm saying S's quite a lot, or ch-ch-ch, or s-s-s, or sh-sh. Okay, all of this is just known as sibilance. It kind of occurs naturally when you're speaking. It becomes a problem sometimes when someone is speaking very closely to a mic and it's kind of giving it so there is a way to get around this. Like, most radio stations will have a processing chain in place which takes the input from the microphones, and it might add some compression, but also what is known as a de-esser, which is basically something that helps reduce those really high frequencies that the microphones are capable of picking up on, which can become kind of quite intense when you're listening to it on the other side of the radio. Again, I personally don't bother with the esser. I think it kind of sounds natural anyway, but it's something you can certainly look into if you're speaking with lots of S's, and it becomes quite annoying. Anyway, onwards and upwards. Next term. Now, plosives. Just like sibilance, this is something that can be really, really annoying. You'll notice right here on my microphone, I've got a bit of foam, which is known as a pop shield or windshield. Now, if I take this off, if I say like Peter Pepper picked a peck of pickled peppers, you're kind of not getting that horrible sound. But if I take this off, Peter Pepper picks a pepper, you'll notice that sounds really bad, especially if you're really close up to the microphone. Now, there's two ways around this. Number one, Peter Pepper picked a peck of, you can speak off axis, so rather than speaking directly onto the capsule with those kind of horrible plosive sounds, you're angling away from the microphone a bit. But most radio stations will 100% use some kind of windshield. They don't trust the DJs not to have that correct microphone technique all the time. So, simple fix, you put that on there and it will reduce, not completely eliminate, but it will reduce a lot of the plosives. You'll see if I do it really hard, I still get that sound. Next up, streaming. What does streaming mean? Nowadays, most people actually know what the word means, but if you rewind like 15 years, a lot of people are like, what's streaming? Streaming is simply the process of broadcasting a signal online. So that could be either video or audio, and it specifically normally refers to a continuous stream of information being passed over a computer network. So for example, if you're a radio.co customer, you have streaming which is built into the platform, which will actually deliver what is going out on your radio station to the listener's computer, which is then turning that stream of data into audio that they can hear, or they might be tuned in on their iPhone or an Alexa speaker or whatever it might be. Streaming is simply the process of transferring data from one place to another. But without streaming, you won't be able to tune into radio stations all over the world from anywhere in the world. So it's really an awesome thing. If you're looking for great streaming services, go and check out radio.co. And to finish up with, Talkback. Now, this is simply a mechanism which allows someone who's not in the studio to talk to the presenter, normally via like one of these little microphones that's kind of sat in the corner. So they might have like it's normally kind of quite tinny and like low quality, but a lot of desks have got it built into them now. So you have Talkback going directly into your cans or your headphones. But it's basically a way that someone who's perhaps a producer, or it might be an engineer or some kind of technician, can basically feed back to the presenter information. It's still used a lot on live TV. Obviously, you see news reporters, they always have those headphones or those kind of little like dangly things going behind their ear. That is just a talkback mechanism. It's a way of the producers telling that person what to do without the audience being aware of it. And it is still used in radio, perhaps not as much these days, because it used to be very much be that sometimes the on-air talent wouldn't even be controlling the stuff. They'd just be talking between the music, which is sometimes still done in radio, believe it or not. But most of the time now, the person who's actually presenting the show will be controlling everything that's going on as well. So talkback is not as a crucial thing as perhaps once it was, but it is still used in radio stations and it's built into most on-air desks. So there we go, 10 radio terms that perhaps you didn't know. I'm curious to know how many of these that you did know, you've heard of these before, or if you think there's any other terms that are really weird and out there. I'm curious to know what your kind of weirdest radio terms are that perhaps if you mentioned it to a civilian, someone on the street, they have no idea that it was related to the radio industry. Leave them in the comments below. As always, please remember, if you've enjoyed this video, I'm always pushing out content about online radio, podcasting and entrepreneurship. So remember to hit that subscribe button. If you think it would be useful to get notified when I release new videos, you can also turn on that notification bell. And finally, remember to give me a thumbs up and all that stuff. You know the drill. I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now. What makes the difference between a successful radio station and a failed project? Well, after working with tens of thousands of broadcasters over the past 15 years and helping lots of people start their own radio stations, I see the same mistakes being made time and time again. So what I've done is I've put together a guide called the 5-Step Radio Startup Checklist, which really covers everything from concepting your radio station to marketing it. And this guide, I believe, will make the difference between you having a successful venture with longevity and creating something that doesn't quite hit the mark. Go and grab your copy now for free at jamesm.com/radio. Just enter your name and your email address and I'll send it over to you straight away. You're going to find it really useful. There's tons of information there which will help you with concepting and launching your brand and bringing it to market.